My fiancé loved another. The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't because he said it. It was because he stopped looking at me the way he used to. There is a particular kind of silence that grows between two people who once spoke in laughter. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't slam doors or shatter glass. It seeps in quietly, like water under a closed door, soaking everything without being seen. Ian used to look at me as if I were the only thing that made sense in a chaotic world. His eyes would soften, his lips would curve slightly, and I would feel chosen. Loved. Safe. Now when he looked at me, there was something else behind his gaze. Distance. We were sitting across from each other in a small cafe the evening I first felt it completely. The lights were warm, golden. Couples around us were whispering, laughing, sharing desserts. I remember noticing how one girl leaned across the table and wiped cream from her boyfriend's lips, and how he kissed her fingers afterward. Ian stirred his coffee without drinking it. "You're quiet," I said gently. "I'm just tired," he replied, forcing a small smile. Tired. He had been tired for weeks. I nodded as if I believed him. Because love makes you do that. It makes you protect the illusion, even when your heart already knows the truth. Later that night, when he dropped me home, he didn't pull me close the way he usually did. His hug felt careful, measured, as if he were afraid of breaking something fragile, or as if he were already letting go. I stood at my gate long after his car disappeared down the street. The wind was cold, brushing against my bare arms. But I didn't move. I told myself I was overthinking. Weddings are stressful. Work is exhausting. Life happens. But deep inside, something had shifted. A week later, I found the message. It wasn't intentional. I wasn't searching for anything. His phone buzzed while he was in the shower, and the screen lit up on the bedside table. Her name wasn't saved as a heart or anything suspicious. It was just Sana. Simple. The message preview glowed in the dark room. "I miss you already." 3 words. 3 words that rearranged my entire future. My fingers trembled before I even touched the phone. I told myself there must be an explanation. Maybe she was a colleague. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe. But my heart already knew. I unlocked the phone. He had given me his password months ago, laughing, saying, "I have nothing to hide from my future wife." A future wife. The chat opened like a wound. Messages stretched back weeks. Late night conversations. Private jokes. Shared memories. Words that felt intimate in a way that made my stomach twist. And then I saw it. "I can't stop thinking about you," he had written. Her reply came seconds later. "Then don't." I don't remember when I started crying. I only remember the sound of the shower running and the feeling of the floor beneath me as I slowly sank down. My chest hurt. Not the dramatic kind of pain you see in movies. It was quieter, heavier, like something pressing down on my lungs. This can't be real, I thought. We were planning our wedding. Our families had met. Invitations were being designed. I had already chosen my dress. I had imagined walking toward him. Imagined the way his eyes would shine when he saw me. Had he already loved her then? Had he been holding my hand while thinking about someone else? The bathroom door opened. Steam spilled into the room, along with the scent of his soap. He froze when he saw me on the floor. His phone clutched tightly in my hand. Ariba. His voice cracked slightly. I looked up at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at him. I wanted to demand an explanation that would somehow erase everything I had just read. Instead, I asked quietly, "Who is she?" He didn't pretend not to understand. He closed his eyes for a second, like a man bracing himself for impact. It's not what you think. The oldest lie in the world. Then tell me what it is. I whispered. He stepped closer, running a hand through his damp hair. She's someone I knew before. We reconnected. It happened. It just happened. I repeated, the words tasting bitter. You don't understand, he said softly. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to, but he did. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. Do you love her? The room felt too small. The air too thin. He didn't answer immediately. And that silence was louder than anything he could have said. Finally, barely audible, he whispered. I don't know. Something inside me shattered. Not because he loved her, but because he wasn't sure he loved me. I laughed then. A broken, unfamiliar sound. You don't know. I care about you, he said quickly. You're important to me. You're my fiancé. Important. Like a responsibility. Like an obligation. Do you love her? I asked again, my voice steadier this time. He looked away. Yes. The word was soft. Gentle. As if it were something precious. And in that moment, I realized the most painful truth of all. He had fallen in love with someone else while promising forever to me. I felt strangely calm. So what am I? I asked. He took a step toward me, but I stepped back. You're my life, he said desperately. You're my family. You're everything I planned. But she was what he felt. Tears blurred my vision. You can't plan love, Ayan. He looked torn, guilty, confused, but not heartbroken. And that was the difference between us. I loved him in a way that would have burned the world down just to keep him warm. He loved me in a way that made sense. He loved her in a way that made him lose sense. I need time, he murmured. Time, the cruelest request of all. Because time meant I would stay. Time meant I would wait while he decided which heart he wanted. I handed him his phone. You already chose, I said quietly. And for the first time since we met, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing me, but fear of facing what he had done. I walked out of the room before he could say anything else. Outside, the night felt colder than usual. The sky was dark, endless, indifferent to the collapse of my world. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried to breathe. Somewhere inside that house, the man I was supposed to marry was grieving another woman. And I was still wearing his ring. The ring felt heavier than it ever had before. I didn't take it off that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, my hand resting on my chest. The diamond catching the faint streetlight that filtered through the curtains. It glittered as if nothing had changed. As if promises hadn't just cracked open like thin glass. I kept replaying his voice in my head. Yes, when not loud, not ashamed, just honest. There is a particular cruelty in honesty when it comes too late. My phone buzzed beside me. His name lit up the screen. Ayaan. I watched it vibrate until it stopped. Then again. And again. Finally, a message. Please let's talk. As if we hadn't already said. The only words that mattered. I turned the phone face down. I didn't trust myself to hear his voice again. I didn't trust myself not to forgive him simply because he sounded sorry. The next morning, the world continued as if nothing had happened. The sun rose. Birds sang. Vendors shouted in the streets. Somewhere, someone was laughing. And I felt like I was attending my own funeral. My mother called me into the kitchen. Your future in-laws are coming this weekend to finalize the guest list, she said cheerfully. We should confirm the caterer today. The word in-laws pierced through me. I forced a smile. Okay. My reflection in the kitchen window looked pale. Hollow. How could everything look so normal when my life had tilted off its axis? I wondered if he had texted her that morning. If he had woken up thinking about her instead of me. If he missed her the way she said she missed him. The thought clawed at my chest. I needed answers. Not because they would fix anything, but because my mind refused to stop imagining worse ones. By afternoon, I couldn't bear it anymore. I drove to his apartment without calling. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but inside I felt like a storm, barely contained by skin. When he opened the door, his eyes were red. He hadn't shaved. His hair was messy. He looked like someone who hadn't slept. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Ariba, he breathed. Can I come in? I asked. He stepped aside. The apartment felt different. Or maybe I did. We sat across from each other on the couch, where we had once planned our honeymoon, where we had laughed about baby names, where he had pulled me into his arms and promised, it's always going to be you. I folded my hands in my lap. How long? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of smiles. Of cake tastings. Of engagement photos. 90 days of him loving her. Did you ever plan to tell me? I asked quietly. He rubbed his forehead. I didn't think it would go this far. So you thought you could just feel something, and it would disappear. He looked at me helplessly. I tried to stop it. But you didn't. Silence. I swallowed hard. Did you meet her? He hesitated. That was answer enough. How many times? A few, he admitted. A few. I imagined them sitting somewhere, maybe at a cafe like the one we used to visit. I imagined her laughing. I imagined him looking at her the way he used to look at me. My stomach twisted. Does she know about me? I asked. Yes. And he looked ashamed now. She told me to choose. You, of course she did. And you? I whispered. I told her I needed time. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. So I'm the safe option. No, he said quickly. You're not safe. You're stable. You're my history. My family loves you. Our lives are already intertwined. Stable. History. Intertwined. All words that sounded like chains instead of love. And she. I pressed. His eyes softened in a way that broke me all over again. She makes me feel alive. There it was. The truth stripped bare. I stood up before I could fall apart in front of him. So, what do you want? I asked. He looked at me as if I had asked the most impossible question in the world. I don't want to lose you. That's not what I asked. He ran a hand through his hair again. Frustrated. I want both of you in different ways. The audacity of that honesty almost impressed me. You can't have both, I said firmly. I know. Then choose. The word hung between us like a blade. He looked at me for a long moment. I saw the battle in his eyes. The fear. The confusion. The selfishness. And I realized something painful. He was trying to choose between comfort and desire. Between a life that made sense and a love that didn't. But no one should ever be chosen because they make sense. Minutes passed. My heart pounded so loudly. I was sure he could hear it. Finally, he whispered. If I walk away from you, I lose everything. And if you stay? I asked. His silence answered again. He would lose her, and that thought seemed heavier. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. His brows furrowed. For what? For being honest. I reached for my ring. My fingers trembled as I slid it off. The indentation it left on my skin looked like a scar. Ariba, don't do this, he said. Panic rising in his voice. You already did. I replied softly. I placed the ring on the table between us. It looked small. Insignificant. How can you just walk away? He demanded. I looked at him, really looked at him. I'm not walking away, I said. You did. The moment you fell in love with someone else. A tears filled his eyes now. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, I whispered. And I deserve someone who doesn't have to think about whether they love me. The room felt unbearably quiet. I would have given you everything. I continued, my voice breaking. I was ready to build a life with you. I was ready to grow old with you. And you were divided. He covered his face with his hands. For a second, I almost reached out to comfort him. Old habits. Old love. But I stopped myself. Because loving him was the very thing that was destroying me. I turned toward the door. Ariba. He called, his voice cracking. What if I choose you? I paused but didn't turn around. I don't want to be chosen out of fear, I said. Or guilt. Or obligation. My hand rested on the doorknob. I want to be loved without competition. And then I walked out. This time, I didn't look back. But as I stepped into the fading light of evening, I realized something that hurt even more than losing him. He would go to her now. Not because I pushed him, but because I finally stopped holding on. The days after I left him blurred into something shapeless. I expected dramatic grief. Endless sobbing. Sleepless nights filled with screams into pillows. Instead, I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left behind a body that still moved, still breathed, still answered when spoken to, but wasn't entirely alive. My mother noticed first. You look tired, she said one evening, studying my face too carefully. I am, I replied. It wasn't a lie. Grief is exhausting, even when you're the one who chooses it. The wedding preparations didn't stop immediately. Why would they? No one knew. I kept the secret like a fragile glass in my hands. I wasn't ready to explain. I wasn't ready to watch their faces fall. I wasn't ready to hear the questions. What happened? Was there a fight? Can it be fixed? I couldn't say. He loved someone else. The words felt too humiliating. 3 days later, he called again. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time before answering. Hello? Silence at first. Then his breathing. I went to see her, he said. Of course he did. And my voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. I told her everything. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. She said, she won't be second. He continued. She doesn't want me if I'm still tied to you. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Smart girl. And what did you say? I asked. I told her you left me. The phrasing hit differently. Left me. As if I had abandoned him. As if I had a choice. I murmured. Ariba. His voice cracked. I don't know how this became my life. You built it, I wanted to say. But I was too tired. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. I miss you. The simplicity of that confession almost broke me. I miss us, he added. I miss the way things were before all this. Before he fell in love with someone else. You don't miss me, I said softly. You miss certainty. He didn't respond, because he knew I was right. I haven't told my parents, he admitted. Neither have I. Another silence. Heavy. Shared. Can we meet? He asked. I hesitated. Meeting him felt dangerous. Like reopening a wound that had barely started to clot. But there were still things unsaid. Not between us. Between me and myself. Okay, I whispered. We met at the park where he had proposed. Cruel choice. The bench was still there. The trees still stretched high into the sky, as if they hadn't witnessed promises crumble beneath them. He was already waiting when I arrived. For a second, my heart betrayed me. It skipped. He stood up as soon as he saw me. His eyes scanned my face like he was searching for something familiar. "You look thinner," he said quietly. "You look lost," I replied. We sat down, leaving a careful distance between us. "I ended it with her," he said suddenly. The words hung in the air. I didn't react. "She said she couldn't trust me," he continued. "She said if I could do this to you, I could do it to her." A smart girl. I thought again. "And?" I asked. "And I realized I was about to lose you both." There it was. Not heartbreak. Loss. Possession slipping away. "So you chose," I said. "Yes. And you chose her." "You?" he breathed. The wind moved gently through the trees. I waited for relief. For joy. For the rush of being wanted again. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a quiet ache. "Why?" I asked. "Because you're my future," he said immediately. "Your stability. You understand me. Our families." I shook my head slowly. "Not that." He frowned. "Why me?" I clarified. "Why do you love me?" He opened his mouth, and then closed it. Time stretched painfully between us. Finally, he whispered, "Because I've always loved you. Always." "But you fell for her," I said gently. I was confused. "You were alive," I corrected. His eyes filled with frustration. "Why are you making this so difficult?" "I chose you. Isn't that what you wanted?" "No, I never wanted to be an option. I wanted to be the only one," I said. "You are now." "Because she walked away." He flinched. The truth stung. "If she had stayed," I continued softly, "would you be sitting here choosing me?" He didn't answer. And that silence told me everything. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I love you," he said desperately. "We can fix this." I looked at the place where he had once knelt with a ring in his hand. "I would spend the rest of my life wondering," I whispered. "Every time you're quiet. Every time you smile at your phone. Every time you seem distant. I would wonder if I'm enough." "You are enough," he insisted. "Not for you," I said gently. The words weren't angry. They were simply true. He reached for my hand. I let him hold it for a second. His touch was familiar. Warm. Painfully familiar. And that was the problem. It still felt like home. But homes can burn down. And even if you rebuild them, you never fully trust the walls again. I wanted to marry the man who looked at me like I was everything, I said softly. Not the man who had to compare me to someone else. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "No," I replied. "You made a choice." His grip tightened. "Please don't throw us away." Us? There was no us anymore. There was a version of us that existed before Sana. And there was this broken, fragile thing sitting on a park bench. "I don't hate you," I told him. He looked surprised. "I just can't know what I know." A tear slipped down his cheek. I had never seen him cry before. And it shattered something inside me. But love isn't just about feeling. It's about trust. And mine was gone. Slowly, I slipped my hand out of his. "This time," I said. "Standing up. Choose yourself." He stared up at me, confused. "Figure out why you needed someone else to feel alive." I continued. "Because until you understand that, you'll keep breaking people." His face crumpled. I almost knelt down and held him. Almost. But I didn't. Because I was finally choosing myself too. As I walked away, I heard him call my name once. Just once. I didn't turn around. And for the first time since all of this began, the tears finally fell. Not because he chose me. Not because he didn't. But because I loved him enough to let him go. The wedding was officially canceled 2 days later. I didn't let him do it. I called his mother myself. My hands trembled as I held the phone to my ear, listening to the ringing that felt louder than it should have. When she answered, her voice was warm, unaware, already speaking about fabric samples and guest lists. "Auntie?" My voice cracked before I could control it. There was a pause. "Ariba? Beta? Is everything all right?" No. Nothing was all right. But I swallowed the truth carefully, piece by piece, until it sounded digestible. "We've decided not to move forward with the wedding." Silence. A sharp intake of breath. "What happened?" she asked, her tone shifting instantly. "It's better this way," I said softly. "For both of us." She asked questions. Of course she did. Mothers always search for reasons. For someone to blame. For something to fix. I didn't give her details. I protected him. Even now. When I ended the call, I realized something that made my chest tighten. Loving someone doesn't disappear the moment they hurt you. It lingers. Like smoke after a fire. My own parents reacted differently. My mother cried quietly in her room. My father grew silent in that dangerous way men do, when they are trying not to explode. Did he do something? My father asked one evening, his voice low. I hesitated. The truth hovered on my tongue. "Yes," I said finally. He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. I knew something felt off. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He looked at me then, softer. "You didn't do anything wrong." But it felt like I had. It felt like I had failed some invisible test. What was she that I wasn't? Prettier? More exciting? Less predictable? The questions began to follow me everywhere. In the mirror. In the shower. In the quiet before sleep. I started comparing myself to a woman I had never even met. It was cruel, the way the mind invents competition. One night, unable to bear it anymore, I searched her name. Sana. Her social media profile appeared instantly. My heart pounded as I opened it. She was beautiful. Not in an intimidating way. In a soft, effortless way. Warm smile. Expressive eyes. Photos filled with friends, laughter, life. She looked alive. I stared at her picture for a long time. Is this what he meant? She makes me feel alive. I felt small. Then angry. Then ashamed for feeling angry. Because she hadn't promised me forever. He had. I closed the app and threw my phone onto the bed. Why was I dissecting myself when he was the one who broke us? Days turned into weeks. People whispered. Relatives called. Some expressed sympathy. Others curiosity disguised as concern. Engagements break sometimes. One aunt said on the phone. At least it happened before marriage. Before marriage. As if that made it painless. As if heartbreak checks legal documents before entering your life. One afternoon, I ran into him unexpectedly. I was at the grocery store, staring blankly at shelves I didn't need, when I felt it. That familiar awareness. I turned. He was standing near the fruit section, frozen mid-step. For a second, the world narrowed. It was just us again. He looked thinner. Tired. His eyes searched mine cautiously. Ariba, he said softly. I nodded. Ayan. He strangers sharing names that once felt sacred. We stood there awkwardly, surrounded by ordinary people choosing vegetables and comparing prices. How have you been? He asked. The question felt absurd. Fine. I lied. He studied me like he used to when he was trying to read my moods. I heard your father was unwell last week, he said gently. You heard? He looked down. I still ask about you. My chest tightened despite myself. Why? I asked. His answer came without hesitation. Because I still care. Care. The word hovered between us like something fragile and unfinished. Are you with her? I asked quietly. He shook his head. No. Something flickered in his eyes. Regret? Longing? Loneliness? I thought you chose me, I said carefully. I did, he replied. But you didn't choose me back. The accusation was subtle, but it was there. I inhaled slowly. I chose my peace. He looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. I made a mess of everything, he admitted. I hurt you. I hurt her. And now I don't have either of you. There was a strange vulnerability in his voice. For a split second, I imagined stepping closer, letting him apologize properly, letting us try again. The image was tempting. Two lonely people reaching for what's familiar. But loneliness is not love. And regret is not commitment. I hope you figure yourself out, I said sincerely. He swallowed. Do you ever miss me? The honesty of the question caught me off guard. Every day, I almost said. Instead, I answered carefully. I miss who I thought you were. His expression crumpled slightly. That version of you, I continued, would have never made me feel like I was competing for my own fiancé. He closed his eyes briefly. I'm sorry, he whispered. This time, the apology felt real, not defensive, not desperate, just broken. I nodded. I know. There was nothing left to dissect, nothing left to salvage. Just two people who once loved each other deeply. Standing under fluorescent lights, surrounded by the mundane rhythm of life that refused to pause for heartbreak. I hope you're happy one day, he said. I looked at him for a long moment. I hope you are too. And then I walked away again. Not dramatically, not angrily, just steadily. But this time, something inside me felt different. The ache was still there. The memories were still sharp, but beneath the sadness, there was something new. Strength. Because loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. And losing someone doesn't mean losing your worth. As I stepped out of the store and into the evening air, I realized something quietly profound. He had loved another, but I had loved myself enough to walk away. Winter arrived gently that year. Not with storms or dramatic winds, but with a quiet drop in temperature that settled into the bones before anyone noticed. The mornings became softer, wrapped in pale fog. The nights stretched longer, giving people more time to think. I found myself thinking less. Not because the memories were gone, but because they no longer ruled me. It had been 6 months since the wedding that never happened. 6 months since I took off the ring. 6 months since I learned that love can exist and still not be enough. The first few months were survival. I avoided places we used to go. I deleted photos in batches, never all at once, because my heart couldn't handle that kind of finality. I folded the dress I had chosen and placed it in a box at the back of my closet. I didn't throw it away. Not yet. Grief is strange like that. It asks for time, even when you know there is no going back. One evening, as I sat on the rooftop of our house, wrapped in a shawl, my younger cousin joined me. "You seem different," she said, leaning against the wall beside me. "How?" "Quieter, but stronger," I smiled faintly. "I had to become someone new," I replied. Because the girl who believed love alone could protect her future had been naive, and she had been shattered. But she had also survived. There were nights when I still dreamed of him. In those dreams, everything was simple again. He looked at me the way he used to. There was no other name between us. No hesitation. No divided heart. And then I would wake up. For a few seconds, I would feel that familiar ache. But it no longer consumed me. It passed like a wave. One afternoon, months later, I heard he was moving away for work. A different city. A fresh start. The news didn't break me. It didn't even shock me. It simply settled inside me like a closing chapter. That evening, my phone buzzed. His name. I stared at it, surprised by how calm I felt. I answered. He said softly. "Hi, I'm leaving tomorrow," I heard. There was a faint, sad chuckle on the other end. News travels fast. Silence followed. Not heavy, not painful, just reflective. I wanted to say goodbye properly. He continued. "And thank you." "For what?" "For loving me the way you did." My throat tightened unexpectedly. "I didn't appreciate it the way I should have," he admitted. I was chasing something I didn't understand. I confused excitement with depth, and I hurt the one person who truly cared. His words were steady. No excuses. No defensiveness. Just truth. "I've had a lot of time to think," he went on. "You were never lacking. It was me. I didn't know how to sit with contentment. I thought love always had to feel dramatic. Intense. Like fire. And," I asked gently, And I learned that fire burns out quickly. The wind moved around me as I listened. I hope you find someone who doesn't need to lose you to understand your value, he said. There it was. Closure. Not the kind that erases pain, but the kind that softens it. I hope you find peace, I replied sincerely. Goodbye, Ariba. Goodbye. The word lingered long after the call ended. I didn't cry. I didn't feel empty. I just felt complete. Later that night, I went to my closet and pulled out the box. I opened it slowly. The dress lay inside, untouched. White. Delicate. A symbol of a future that never arrived. I ran my fingers over the fabric. And for the first time, I didn't feel loss. I felt gratitude. Because if I had married him, I would have spent years questioning my place in his heart. I would have lived with invisible comparisons. I would have silenced my intuition just to keep a promise alive. Instead, I had chosen uncertainty over quiet betrayal. And that choice had saved me. Weeks passed. Life continued to rebuild itself around me. I started working again with renewed focus. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during wedding preparations. I laughed more easily. I slept more peacefully. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. It looked like making tea. In the morning, without checking your phone for a message that will never come. It looked like hearing his name in conversation and not feeling your stomach drop. It looked like realizing you deserve to be someone's first choice without hesitation. One evening, months later, I found myself at a small bookstore cafe. I wasn't looking for anything. I was simply there, and as I stood in line, flipping absent-mindedly through a novel, someone bumped into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," a voice said quickly. I looked up. A stranger. Kind eyes. Apologetic smile. "It's okay," I replied. He glanced at the book in my hand. "That one's good. Slow, but worth it." "Is it?" I asked. "Yeah. The kind of story that teaches you patience." I smiled. Patience. I had learned that word intimately. We talked briefly. Nothing intense. Nothing dramatic. Just simple conversation. And as I walked home later, I realized something profound. My heart didn't race out of fear. It didn't compare. It didn't search for ghosts. It was open. Not desperate. Not wounded. Just open. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the girl I had been on the day I discovered the message. The girl who sat on the floor with shaking hands. The girl who asked, "Do you love her?" The girl who felt her world collapse in a single word. I wanted to reach back and tell her something. You will survive this. You will cry. You will question yourself. You will feel small. But one day, you will realize that someone loving another is not proof that you were unworthy. It is proof that they were not ready for the kind of love you offered. My fiancé loved another, and it broke me. But it also freed me. Because in losing him, I found something I hadn't realized I was missing. Myself.